May I have your attention?
Hi, I'm Greg Inda. Today, I sit down with Gaea Lady and talk about her act, The Spectre.
May I have your attention? May I have your attention?
I'm here with Gaea Lady, and thank you for sitting down.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell me, how did you get started in burlesque?
I have been dancing ever since I was really small. My mom's a music teacher, and so she didn't want to pay for a babysitter, so she would bring me to the art school where she taught music and just put me in a dance class. And I loved it so much that I started dancing at a local studio. Ballet, tap, and jazz,
Okay.
and then acrobatics, and then creative movement.
Creative movement.
Yeah, right, that's where you're a snake on the floor. You're like, be a snake and slither around, here's the sun. And my father told me I could not be a dancer because that was not a real career. So I wasn't allowed to go to college for dance, but I needed to go to college. So I moved to Chicago where I could go to college and dance at the same time. Well, I went to Columbia to get like a illustration or marketing or something. Or graphic design, and then I transferred to the Art Institute and now have a degree in painting and drawing and fiber and material studies, embroidery, bookmaking, paper making,
Okay.
and dyeing, natural dyeing. So that's kind of wraps into a lot of the silks and silk dyeing and stuff that I do nowadays.
Yeah.
I stopped dancing for a little while. Long story. That's how I got into food, though. That's
Okay.
nice, and health. But then belly dancing brought me back into dance, and I started fusing all of these elements. I started fire dancing. I kind of fell into the Burning Man hole,
Okay.
down that rabbit hole. Started fire dancing, fusing that with belly dance and all my other kinds of dance.
Fire, you do hoops, you do veils.
Yep. Yeah.
Where did all that come from?
So in this funny way, because I hadn't been dancing and performing in this way of like concert dance, the modern, the contemporary, like on a stage with an audience, with fancy people, you know, where you rehearse forever and get paid nothing. So all these apparatus and apparatuses helped me get back into dance, because as I started learning hula hooping and poi and staff and fire and veils and flags and whatever I could get my hands on, I fell in love with being able to use my body to do a technique and learn tricks and stuff. We're actually at a perfect point in the story for how I got into burlesque.
Yeah. So
Ta-da!
how did you get into burlesque?
So, from doing all of this fire spinning, veil dancing thing, my friend Kelly was good friends with Nicolle Wood, who used
Okay.
to be the talent manager at Untitled. And
Yeah.
so that's where I met Lindsey, Lady Jack. So I got to see burlesque up close for the first time, and I was just fascinated. I remember watching her put all of her costumes on and being like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. You know, just being so awestruck. She's an amazing performer.
Yeah.
You know this.
I know this.
You know this. But she was one of my really, my first inspirations to do burlesque, but I didn't think I could do it. So we were doing all the variety acts. We were doing the veils, duo veils, projections. We were doing hula hoops. I was doing solo fire. I was just starting to do solos again and really get my feet wet for that. And then Nicolle Wood put out this, she was like, you should start doing burlesque. I was like, I don't do burlesque, Nicolle. She's like, you should start doing burlesque. And I was like, okay, I'll think about it. I'm very okay with my body, but it's very different to display how okay with you are with your body. It's very empowering.
Yeah.
So that was a big hump for me to get over, especially after years and years of people telling me I was fat and not good enough and not shaped the right way in the ballet world. So
Okay.
getting into burlesque as a mentality was very healing,
Yeah.
and very empowering, and is, to go into the future, a big reason why I do it and feel so compelled to continue to do it, to inspire people.
But for many of us, there is no form of self-expression that makes us feel more vulnerable than dancing. It's literally full-body vulnerability. The only other full-body vulnerability that I can think of is being naked. And I don't have to tell you how vulnerable that makes most of us feel. And you're doing both. You're naked and you're dancing. Hyper vulnerable. Do you feel that way?
You know, now I don't. But when I first started doing burlesque, I think what really intrigued me at first was that I didn't get scared often. Fire didn't scare me. Spinning fire, doing giant things, going on a road trip, backpacking through other countries alone with no phone, like all these things that most people are terrified of doing didn't scare me. But for me, being naked in front of an audience dancing was one of those things that really put me there. And that was captivating. And it was amazing to look inside myself and see why that made me feel as such, and to overcome that.
Okay, so let's talk about your act, Spectre. Or is it The Spectre?
The Spectre.
The Spectre.
Wait, we're going to change the hair now.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, we just got blonde.
It's blonde.
How did that act come to be?
So I had been playing with veils for a long time and had done a bunch of duo acts with Kelly Spring and performed those, and started doing solo acts with the veil, and did do one burlesque act with the silk. It's very similar to the Spectre in that it has 3 veils, and I spin out of silk pretty much the whole time. I was working on the vertical sideshow with Ray Gunn, and Ray, because he's Ray Gunn, was like, make it bigger, I want more silk, I want you to like spin out of them and wrap them around. I'm like, I already have an act like this. He's like, great, do it to this music, more.
This act is intended to have projection.
Can be,
but then you have variations for rooms that maybe can't accommodate that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've started with a lot of the veil work I do. I put projections of videos my friends make or that I make on top of them to create a tapestry of moving light and kinetic dance, like a moving projection screen with the dancer kind of flowing in and out of that. So like a whole part of this light explosion. So the Spectre can have projections, or it doesn't have to.
You submitted the act to BHOF. You got accepted. What at that point was your expectations? Just to go there and
do it? Yeah.
Rock it out?
I honestly had no idea what the Burlesque Hall of Fame was.
Was that your first year being there?
That was my first year being there.
Wow. Okay.
It was crazy. And it was my first year submitting also.
And just to clarify, you won Best Debut and Most Classic.
Yes.
Which is interesting. I mean, there's some interestingness to the Most Classic victory because the weighted veils that you use are something that like you invented based off of stuff. We talked about this a bit.
I was mystified when they said for Most Classic, like they said, and now for Most Classic, I literally shut my brain off. I'm like, this won't be me, this is fine. Because I didn't consider myself a classic burlesque performer at that point at all. And so I don't actually think it harkens to classic burlesque in the like bump grind, tease, shimmy, showgirl kind of way. But rather, I think it harkens to the way like classic forms look. It's very kind of classically Greek or Roman, classic dance, very modern and ballet, but also in the approach, it's very classic in this tease of like show, reveal, cover, you know, like you can't really see it all, and then at the end, like everything is revealed for a moment. But it has this vintage quality to it.
It did harken back to that Louis Fuller Serpentine video.
Absolutely, yes.
And I didn't actually know that until today.
Really?
Yeah, I was doing research on things, and Lindsey showed me the video, and it was interesting that Louis Fuller, and I hope I'm saying that correctly.
That is how Google told us to say it.
Google told us to say it that way. Specifically, that Serpentine number. She developed like the colored gels to light it with,
right?
So that she could change the colors on the silk, which is thinking about your act and the projection quality to it.
Right. So Louis Fuller was on my radar in art school with like the big fabrics and stuff, but I never set out to recreate a piece like that. It was just, you know, how inspiration comes. I have notebooks, I have binders full of inspiration that I have just like collected and written down and drawn and painted over the years. And so the projection and the veils and the silk just happened out of my brain, like not even trying to be this thing. And then realized afterwards that it was very much like Louis Fuller, who is an amazing woman.
Well, let's talk about these weighted veils.
Oh, yeah.
So this is something that like you adapted, you invented. This is like your thing.
Yeah, it's definitely my obsession brainchild. So it's adapted from spinning flags that were a raver toy I used to still do sometimes, not as much as I did when I was 22, go to a lot of raves and overnight parties, and I would be hired to do performance for these ambient stuff. So we would make these spinning flags and do big performances. It's the first time I ever did projections was with spinning flags with a group of 10 of us. And then I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But it's hard to get 10 people together. So anyway, so then I took these flags and one night in a deep in intoxication of choice, and with a group of people, we were all just playing. We had a fire troupe called Solaire, and we would meet up once a week and just putter around and experiment. And I was like, this needs to be bigger. This flag could be my belly dance veil. So I went upstairs to my sewing machine and waited. You know, they were like, what are you doing up here? I was like, just wait, I'll be back down, just an hour. And then I made a weighted veil, and it definitely changed my flow and my inspiration and the way in which like I can connect to these things, because silk is amazing, and it has such a classic quality to it. It's ancient, right? It has so much reverberation through history. I sew the actual weights into the silk fabric accordingly, and then that allows the weight. It allows the silk to have weight at the end of it, so it kind of zooms around and has a little more of a carry than you would if it was just the silk veil floating around. So it becomes almost like a poi, a rope dart, or the same way in which you can manipulate a hula hoop in circles over and over, and gives you an entirely different set of movements and capability than you could do if you just had the silk itself.
So what are the costume pieces?
So the costume pieces for this, this is the sparkliest act that I ever made. Well, it became sparkly for BHOF. Gunn also was like, you need to add 1 million rhinestones. I was like, I don't like being sparkly. And he was like, buy more rhinestones. Just get over it.
Yeah.
So I did. And also now I'm obsessed with sparkly things and silk. But so the costume is very small. This is the first time I incorporated a merkin into my act as well, which is it's a small piece of fabric that you tape onto your nether region, so that way you don't show either of your holes, which then gets you fined. So it's as small as you can go. But this was actually pretty big, right? So I had that and these invisible pasties, and I had this vision for the Spectre to be this ethereal, almost like uncatchable sprite, but still very grounded in space. Yeah, so, you know, unnameable, but she has these wings that drape, and they're beaded fringe, so they sparkle and kind of flow. They're really nice. And then I really love Art Nouveau, and I really love Art Deco. So it has this like beautiful kind of draped headpiece and, you know, big collar. So it's nice. It's very adorned, but very naked at the same time.
Where do you draw your inspirations for the choreography of the piece?
So this was a piece that was mostly improvisational situation for a long time, until I did choreograph it. And the choreography came from taking bits out of the improv over time and seeing what worked and what didn't and what I loved the most. And sometimes these things come out in a studio, and sometimes they only come out on stage. So improving on stage is a big part of my practice, to be like, oh my gosh, I never did that before. That was amazing. I need to put that in there. So I would slowly start to put different pieces of the act together, and then bring inspiration from belly dancing, from ballet, from aerial silks with the different foot wrap, from like binding and holding and stretching, different ways that I would stretch in ballet, those kind of things, and different shapes that the veil would make while turning.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking about your act, The Spectre, and all of your background and everything. It's such a beautiful act.
Thank you.
I love watching it. If people want to book you, or if they want to purchase some weighted veils, how do they get a hold of you?
I have a website. It's GaeaLadyChicago.com. You can go there, or you can message me, Gaea Lady, on Facebook or Instagram or at Gmail. I don't know. Find me. I really love to custom make things. It's a whole collaboration thing. So if you want to collaborate, let me know.
And you
I
should.
might be your girl. Maybe not, but maybe.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Can we end it with a high five?
Yeah.
Yeah.